The first day of college is always filled with excitement and nerves. For Clara, it was no different. She was thrilled to start her freshman year at Millstone University, a prestigious institution with a long history. Nestled in a small town surrounded by dense forests, the university's ancient buildings had an air of mystery about them. Clara's parents helped her move into her dorm, a Gothic-style building named Hawthorne Hall. It was one of the oldest structures on campus, rumored to be haunted. Clara didn't believe in ghosts, but the thought of living in such a historic place excited her. Her room, 203, was on the second floor. As she unpacked, she met her roommate, Jess, a bubbly girl from California. The two hit it off immediately, sharing stories about their hometowns and their hopes for the future. As the sun set, casting eerie shadows through the tall, narrow windows, Clara noticed a small, dusty door in the corner of their room. It was so well hidden behind an old wardrobe that it seemed like no one had opened it in years. "What's that?" Clara asked, pointing at the door. Jess shrugged. "Probably just a closet. This building is full of weird little nooks and crannies." Curiosity getting the better of her, Clara tried the handle, but it was locked. "Strange," she muttered. That night, after a long day of orientation activities, Clara fell into a deep sleep. But around midnight, she was jolted awake by a loud thud. She sat up, her heart pounding, and listened. Silence. She glanced over at Jess, who was fast asleep. Just as Clara was about to lie back down, she heard a faint whisper. It was coming from the direction of the hidden door. The next morning, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She decided to investigate the hidden door further. After her classes, she went to the library and searched for any information about Hawthorne Hall. She found an old, dusty book about the university's history. According to the book, Hawthorne Hall had been built in the late 1800s as a women's dormitory. Over the years, it had housed thousands of students. But what caught Clara's eye was a section about a series of mysterious disappearances that had occurred in the 1920s. Several female students had vanished without a trace, and the only common link was that they all lived in room 203. Clara's blood ran cold. She had to know more. She dug deeper, finding old newspaper articles that mentioned strange noises, whispers, and sightings of shadowy figures around the dorm. The disappearances had never been solved, and room 203 had eventually been sealed off for decades before being reopened in recent years. That night, Clara told Jess about her findings. Jess laughed it off, but Clara could see the unease in her eyes. "I don't know, Clara. It sounds like a bunch of old ghost stories to me," Jess said. "Maybe," Clara replied, "but I heard something last night. From that door." Jess sighed. "Fine, let's check it out together." They borrowed a set of lock-picking tools from a friend who was into that sort of thing. With a bit of effort, they managed to unlock the hidden door. It creaked open to reveal a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. Armed with flashlights, Clara and Jess descended the stairs. The air grew colder and damper as they went deeper. The staircase ended in a small, stone-walled room. It looked like it hadn't been disturbed in decades. In the center of the room was an old wooden chest. Clara's hands trembled as she opened the chest. Inside were personal items, letters, photographs, and diaries belonging to the girls who had disappeared. The last diary entry was dated November 11, 1925. It described strange occurrences, whispers, and shadows. The final sentence sent chills down Clara's spine. "I fear that tonight will be my last. The darkness is coming for me." As they sifted through the items, a cold draft blew through the room, extinguishing their flashlights. Panic set in. Clara and Jess fumbled to turn them back on, but when the lights flickered to life, they found themselves not alone. A shadowy figure stood at the base of the stairs, its eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. Clara and Jess froze in terror. The shadowy figure began to move toward them, its form shifting and twisting. Clara's mind raced. She grabbed Jess's hand, and they bolted up the stairs, slamming the hidden door behind them. For a moment, they stood in silence, their hearts pounding. Then the whispers began again, louder this time, filling the room with an eerie chorus of unintelligible murmurs. Jess clutched Clara's arm. "We need to get out of here." They spent the night in the common room, too scared to return to their dorm. The next day, they reported what they had found to the dormitory supervisor, Mrs. Hargrove. She listened with a skeptical ear but promised to look into it. Days passed, and the whispers continued. Clara and Jess started noticing other strange occurrences. Objects moved on their own, cold spots appeared in the room, and they both had vivid nightmares about the shadowy figure. Desperate for answers, Clara reached out to a local historian, Professor Thompson, who specialized in the university's history. He agreed to meet them at a nearby cafe. Professor Thompson was a tall, thin man with a scholarly air about him. He listened intently as Clara and Jess recounted their experiences. When they finished, he nodded thoughtfully. "I've heard about the disappearances," he said, "but I never knew about the hidden room. This is very intriguing." He explained that the disappearances in the 1920s had been attributed to a series of tragic accidents and unsolved cases. However, there were always rumors of something more sinister. The girls who vanished were all described as happy and well-adjusted, with no reason to run away. Professor Thompson revealed that he had come across a mention of a cult that operated in the area during that time. They were obsessed with the occult and believed in harnessing dark energies. The cult members were rumored to have conducted rituals in secret locations around the town, including the university. Clara's mind reeled. Could the hidden room have been one of their ritual sites? And what did that mean for the spirits of the girls who had disappeared? The professor gave them an old map of the university grounds, which showed several other potential locations where the cult might have conducted their rituals. He also warned them to be careful. If the spirits are restless, it means something is unfinished. You may need to find a way to put them to rest. Determined to uncover the truth and put the spirits to rest, Clara and Jess began investigating the other locations marked on the map. They visited abandoned buildings, old basements, and hidden tunnels, each place more unsettling than the last. At one site, they found remnants of ritualistic symbols and burnt-out candles. At another, they discovered an old journal that belonged to a cult member. It detailed their attempts to summon and bind spirits, but the final entries suggested that something had gone terribly wrong. As they pieced together the history, Clara and Jess realized that the cult had accidentally trapped the spirits of the girls they were trying to summon. The rituals had been botched, leaving the spirits in a state of unrest. Back in their dorm, the hauntings grew more intense. The shadowy figure appeared more frequently, and the whispers became clearer. One night, Clara woke up to find the figure standing at the foot of her bed. She mustered the courage to speak. "What do you want?" she asked. The figure didn't respond verbally, but Clara felt a surge of emotions: fear, sadness, anger. It pointed towards the hidden door, then vanished. Clara and Jess knew they had to act. They gathered all the information items they had collected and returned to the hidden room. This time, they were prepared. They brought candles, chalk, and a book on protective rituals they had found in the library. Following the instructions, they created a protective circle and began the ritual. As they chanted, the temperature in the room dropped, and the shadowy figure reappeared, accompanied by the faint outlines of the missing girls. Clara and Jess continued the ritual, focusing on releasing the trapped spirits. The room shook, and a deafening roar filled their ears. The shadowy figure lunged at them, but it was repelled by the protective circle. With one final chant, the room exploded in light. The spirits of the girls, now fully visible, smiled gratefully before dissipating into the air. The shadowy figure let out a final, anguished scream and vanished. In the weeks that followed, the haunting ceased. Clara and Jess felt a sense of peace in their dorm room. They knew they had done the right thing by freeing the spirits. News of their experience spread around campus, and they became somewhat of local legends. Professor Thompson helped them document their findings, and the university acknowledged the dark chapter of its history. Hawthorne Hall was renovated, and room 203 was dedicated to the memory of the girls who had disappeared. Clara and Jess remained close friends, their bond strengthened by the ordeal they had survived together. They often visited the old sites, ensuring that the past remained at rest. And as for room 203, it stood as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a place where darkness had been conquered by courage and compassion. Certainly. Here's a college horror story for you. The narrative will be engaging, aiming to keep the listener hooked with suspense and horror. In the quaint college town of Blackwood, nestled deep in the woods of New England, there stood an ancient dormitory known as Hawthorne Hall. Built in the 1800s, it had housed generations of students, each leaving behind whispers of ghost stories and eerie encounters. But none were as chilling as the tale of Emily. Emily was a freshman, bright-eyed and eager to start her journey at Blackwood College. She was assigned to Hawthorne Hall, room 213. The hall had an aura of old-world charm, with its creaky wooden floors and dimly lit corridors. The seniors often joked about the hall being haunted, but Emily dismissed these as harmless pranks. Her roommate, Sarah, was a sophomore with a serious demeanor. She had experienced the rumors firsthand but never spoke about them. They got along well, their contrasting personalities balancing each other. One crisp autumn evening, Emily decided to explore the campus library. It was an imposing Gothic building, filled with dusty old books and ancient tomes. As she wandered through the aisles, she stumbled upon a section dedicated to the history of Blackwood College. Intrigued, she pulled out a thick, leather-bound volume titled The Silent Dormitory, A History of Hawthorne Hall. The book detailed the construction of the dormitory and its evolution over the years. But what caught Emily's eye was a chapter on the strange occurrences that had plagued the hall. According to the book, in 1923, a student named Margaret had mysteriously disappeared from room 213. Her body was never found, and her disappearance remained an unsolved mystery. Since then, students who stayed in room 213 reported hearing strange noises, whispers, and even seeing apparitions. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. She closed the book and decided to head back to her room. The walk back to Hawthorne Hall seemed longer than usual, the shadows growing longer and darker. When she finally reached her room, she found Sarah sitting on her bed, reading. "Hey, did you know about a girl named Margaret who disappeared from this room?" Emily asked. Sarah looked up, her expression serious. "Yeah, it's one of the many ghost stories about this place. But they're just stories, right?" Emily nodded, but she couldn't shake the feeling of unease. That night, as she lay in bed, she heard faint whispers. She sat up, straining to hear, but the room was silent. She chalked it up to her imagination and tried to sleep. Over the next few weeks, the whispers grew louder. Emily often felt a cold presence in the room, and sometimes she would wake up to find objects moved or out of place. She confided in Sarah, but her roommate remained skeptical. One night, the whispers became unbearably loud. Emily sat up, her heart pounding. She saw a shadowy figure at the foot of her bed. It was a young woman with long, dark hair and hollow eyes. Emily screamed, but the figure vanished. Sarah woke up and turned on the lights, finding Emily trembling with fear. "What's wrong?" Sarah asked, concerned. "I saw her. Margaret. She was here," Emily stammered. Sarah's expression softened. "Emily, I believe you. Something is wrong with this room." The two girls decided to investigate further. They returned to the library and delved deeper into the history of Margaret's disappearance. They discovered that Margaret had been a talented pianist, and she often played in the music room late at night. One night, she simply vanished, leaving behind her favorite sheet music. Emily and Sarah decided to visit the music room, hoping to find some clues. As they entered the room, the air grew colder. They found the old piano, covered in dust. Emily sat down and began to play one of Margaret's favorite pieces. The notes echoed through the empty hall, and suddenly, the whispers returned, louder and more insistent. "Help me," the voice whispered. Emily stopped playing, her hands shaking. "Did you hear that?" she asked Sarah. Sarah nodded, her face pale. "Yes. We need to find out what happened to Margaret." The girls continued their research, uncovering old newspapers and records. They learned that Margaret had been in a secret relationship with a professor. The scandal had been hushed up, but rumors suggested that the professor had been involved in her disappearance. Determined to uncover the truth, Emily and Sarah decided to confront the spirit. They returned to their room and set up a makeshift seance. They lit candles and placed Margaret's sheet music on the floor. "Margaret, we want to help you," Emily called out. The room grew colder, and the candles flickered. The shadowy figure appeared again, but this time, she seemed less menacing. "Help me find peace," the spirit whispered. Emily and Sarah followed the clues they had gathered, which led them to an old, forgotten cellar beneath Hawthorne Hall. The air was thick with dust and decay. In the corner, they found a hidden compartment. Inside was Margaret's skeletal remains, clutching her sheet music. Tears streamed down Emily's face. "We found you, Margaret." The spirit appeared, her face peaceful. "Thank you," she whispered before vanishing. Emily and Sarah reported their findings to the authorities, and Margaret was given a proper burial. The whispers in room 213 ceased, and the cold presence disappeared. Hawthorne Hall returned to its old, eerie charm, but Emily and Sarah knew they had helped a restless spirit find peace. Years later, students still spoke of the haunting of Hawthorne Hall, but the story of Emily and Sarah's bravery became a legend of its own. The silent dormitory was no longer just a place of fear but a reminder that sometimes, the past needs to be uncovered to find peace. I hope you find this story engaging and chilling enough to captivate your audience. Megan Turner stepped onto the verdant campus of Elmwood University with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The sprawling Gothic architecture of the buildings was both imposing and captivating. It was a fresh start for her, away from the stifling familiarity of her hometown. She had chosen Elmwood for its renowned history department and the opportunity to carve out her own path. Her dormitory, Elmwood Hall, was a grandiose structure that stood at the edge of the campus. It had been a part of the university since its founding in the late 1800s. As she approached, she noticed the intricate carvings and the gargoyles that seemed to watch her every move. "Spooky, right?" a voice interrupted her thoughts. Megan turned to see a girl about her age with dark hair and a friendly smile. "Yeah, but also kind of cool," Megan replied. "I'm Sarah, your dorm neighbor. If you need anything, feel free to knock," Sarah said. Megan smiled. "Thanks, I'm Megan. It's nice to meet you." As Megan settled into her room, she couldn't shake the feeling that Elmwood Hall held secrets. The walls seemed to whisper, and the air felt thick with history. But she brushed it off as nerves and exhaustion from the move. The first night in her new room was uneventful until around 3 a.m. Megan was jolted awake by a loud thud. She sat up, heart racing, and listened intently. Another thud echoed through the hall, followed by a faint whispering. Curiosity got the better of her, and she slipped out of bed, grabbing her phone for light. She tiptoed down the hall, the whispers growing louder but still unintelligible. They seemed to be coming from the old storage room at the end of the hall, a place rumored to be off-limits. As she reached the door, the whispers stopped abruptly, and the air grew colder. Megan's hand trembled as she reached for the doorknob, but before she could touch it, the door creaked open slightly on its own. Inside, the room was filled with old furniture, covered in dusty sheets. The only light came from her phone, casting eerie shadows on the walls. She stepped inside, her breath visible in the frigid air. Suddenly, a figure darted past her, and the door slammed shut behind her. The next morning, Megan recounted her experience to Sarah and a few other students over breakfast. They listened intently, exchanging nervous glances. "I've heard stories about Elmwood Hall being haunted," Sarah said. "There's even a legend about a student who disappeared decades ago." Intrigued, Megan decided to dig deeper. She spent the next few days in the library, poring over old newspapers and university records. She discovered that in 1952, a student named Emily Carter had vanished from Elmwood Hall without a trace. Her disappearance was never solved, and rumors of her ghost haunting the hall had persisted ever since. Megan shared her findings with Sarah, who suggested they hold a séance to try and communicate with Emily's spirit. Though skeptical, Megan agreed, hoping to find some answers. That night, Megan, Sarah, and a few other curious students gathered in the common room of Elmwood Hall. They formed a circle, lit candles, and placed a Ouija board in the center. "Emily Carter, if you're here, please give us a sign," Sarah intoned. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the planchette began to move slowly across the board, spelling out, HELPME. Megan's heart pounded. "What happened to you, Emily?" she asked. The planchette moved again, this time more erratically, TRAPPED. "Trapped? Where?" Sarah asked. DOWNSTRS, the board spelled out. Everyone looked at each other, fear and excitement mingling in their eyes. They decided to venture downstairs to the basement, a place rarely visited and known for its labyrinthine corridors. The group made their way to the basement, the air growing colder with each step. The dim light from their flashlights flickered as if sensing their fear. The basement was a maze of old storage rooms and abandoned offices. As they explored, they heard faint sobbing coming from one of the rooms. They followed the sound to a locked door. Megan's hands shook as she tried the handle, but it wouldn't budge. "Stand back," one of the boys said, and with a few forceful kicks, the door splintered open. Inside, they found a small room with an old desk and a cot. On the desk was a diary, its pages yellowed with age. Megan picked it up and began to read aloud. October 12, 1952. "They locked me in here. I can hear them laughing. I don't know how much longer I can survive." The entries became more frantic, detailing Emily's desperation and fear. The final entry was smudged and barely legible, "I hear them coming. I think they want to silence me for good. If anyone finds this, please tell my family I love them." As Megan finished reading, the temperature in the room plummeted, and the sobbing grew louder. The group turned to see a translucent figure of a girl in old-fashioned clothes standing in the corner, her eyes filled with terror. "It's Emily," Sarah whispered. Emily's ghost pointed to the wall behind them. Megan shined her flashlight and noticed a loose brick. She pried it open, revealing a hidden compartment with a small, dusty box inside. Opening the box, they found a locket with a picture of Emily and a letter addressed to her parents. As Megan held the locket, Emily's ghost smiled sadly and began to fade. "Thank you," a whisper echoed through the room. The next day, Megan took the locket and the letter to the local authorities, who reopened the cold case. It was revealed that Emily had been a victim of foul play by a group of students who had tried to cover up their crime. With the new evidence, the case was finally brought to light, and Emily's family was given closure after all these years. Megan felt a sense of peace knowing that Emily's spirit could finally rest. Elmwood Hall seemed lighter, the oppressive atmosphere lifted. Megan continued her studies, now with a deeper appreciation for the history that surrounded her. Years passed, and Megan graduated with honors, having made lasting friendships and unforgettable memories at Elmwood University. She often spoke about her experiences and the importance of remembering those who came before. Elmwood Hall was eventually renovated, but the story of Emily Carter remained a part of its legacy. Megan's research and bravery in uncovering the truth became a source of inspiration for many students who followed. And on quiet nights, when the wind whispered through the trees, some claimed they could still hear a faint voice saying, "Thank you," a reminder of a spirit that had found peace thanks to a courageous young woman who dared to seek the truth. Megan, now a successful historian, often returned to Elmwood University as a guest lecturer. She would always visit Elmwood Hall, where it all began. The hall had been transformed into a museum of sorts, preserving the memory of its haunted past and celebrating the students who had once called it home. One evening, as Megan stood in front of the old storage room, now a part of the tour, she felt a warm breeze and a sense of gratitude. She knew that Emily was at peace and that her story had made a difference. The legacy of Elmwood Hall continued, a place where history and the supernatural intertwined, and where the courage to seek the truth could lead to the most unexpected and fulfilling of journeys.